But it's fine. It's okay. Jon Gericke in for Eldrin today. Welcome to the show. It's Beyond the Headline. You with SAfm. Lucky to be along with you. It's a Wednesday, hump day down to the weekend. Then it's Thursday, and it's just about Friday already. That's a positive outlook. Welcome to the show. Just sorting out things here in the studio. We're having a bit of fun. What's coming up today? We're going to, at the beginning of the show, and it's going to be difficult for me. I'm going to admit this right off, and any support and help I can get from you will be appreciated. Yesterday, Minister Naledi Pandor called for the ICC to issue a warrant of arrest for Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and other senior decision makers, but has also accused Hamas of violating international humanitarian law. We're going to hear what she said yesterday, and then we're going to talk to the DG of the Department of International Relations and Cooperation and get an exact understanding of what South Africa's standing is in that war and how that relates to other wars around the world. There are a number of conflicts. There's a number of, and I did a show a little while ago on the station about genocides in the world. And we will catch up with DG of DIRCO and find out exactly what their views are. And directly after that, we'll hear from the Vice President of the SA Jewish Board of Deputies, because they disagree vehemently with what Naledi Pandor said. And we will get their views on that as well. Then an update on the Senzo trial, a regular update there, see if anything new has come up in the Pretoria High Court. We're going to go to Johannesburg today, where the city has filed an application for leave to appeal the decision of the High Court in relation to the appointment of Floyd Brink, the city manager. They believe there are a number of legal grounds for concern in the judgment. We will find out what those are. Then the South African flag, the design of the flag, I thought that was settled, signed, sealed, delivered. Well, it's not. A senior official in the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture the Hastings and Mqai has taken the legal route to force the department to recognize him as the designer of South Africa's post-apartheid flag. There's a whole lot of technicalities about whether he was or wasn't and how he sent in the designs, if at all. The Department of Sports, Arts and Culture saying, no, we don't see any design from you. So we'll see what that comes out of that. Tourism sector in South Africa is booming. Significant influx of tourists. 6.1 million visitors arrived in the country. I guess if you want to compare it to the same time last year, was COVID still around? I guess it's recovering is the point. 58% more than this year than there have been in the same time last year. World tourism market is on the go in London. South Africa have a number of representatives there. What was it, 5 years ago as a WTM in London? It is huge. And the South African Pavilion is always one of the brightest, and a number of representatives there. We will talk to the global manager at SA Tourism, Tandiwe Matebela, later on in the program. And then we will hear from you later on in the program. As always, phone lines are open and the WhatsApp numbers are open as well. You're more than welcome to message us. Plenty to talk about. Comments and suggestions, something that we've mentioned, you want to add a question in, we're more than happy to take those calls as well. The number, in case you missed it, 086 000 2032. And the WhatsApp number, as always, 0614 104 107. Let's get started.
You are listening to Jon Gericke on
Northwest, where two learners at a school in Sunnieshof in Northwest are facing a bleak examination period due to acts of bullying. The two have been admitted into mental health facilities where they're being treated for depression. Since the incident, one learner has opted for online schooling while the other is battling to recover from a traumatic suicide attempt. SABC News reporter Silwane Kakao compiled this report.
The agonizing cry of a helpless grandmother who watched his 16-year-old grandchild slip into depression due to bullying at school. Her granddaughter has since stopped going to school and opted for online schooling instead. With challenges such as load shedding, the grandmother says the journey has been difficult.
As a grandmother, it's so painful to see my granddaughter drinking all the stuff that he's drinking because of the depression, to being hospitalized for 2 months, and the principal of the school doesn't do anything about this bullying.
She says they've reported the matter numerous times to the principal, who, to their shock, allegedly made utterances that aggravated their pain and left them feeling hopeless.
I remember he was saying he's tired of black children in that school. At the first time, it was only white children there was no complaints. But since they have the black children, there's always complaints. It's painful.
This is not the only family whose child is being bullied at the school. Diana Huyeman's 18-year-old daughter is another victim, allegedly at the hands of the same bully. She lambasted the school and the Provincial Education Department for not taking their concerns seriously, even after her child's attempted suicide.
As a parent, I want to know whether is the Department of Education and the principal want to see my child dead as she tried to commit suicide before due to this bullying at the school. My daughter is now on depression medication. I went to the principal and he told me that my child should toughen up. I also make the Department of Education aware, but still now I'm still waiting for the intervention.
At the time of broadcast, the Northwest Education Department had not replied to the SABC's inquiry. I'm Selwane Gagau in Sannieshof.
SAfm 104 to 107 nationwide.
Did you see the story? There's been a lot of voting in the States, and in the States they vote for a lot of things. There's an abortion bill in Ohio, but one of the decisions that Ohio voters have approved in the States is to legalize adult recreation of marijuana. It'll start in 30 days. So in this, I think it's much the same. Do we? I think we've got this in South Africa. I've got to double check what our laws are. But adults over 21 in Ohio will now be able to purchase and possess 70 grams of cannabis and can grow up to 6 marijuana plants at home. They'll pay a 10% tax imposed on sales, going mostly towards addiction services, communities with cannabis facilities, and social equity and jobs programs. The drug's illegal at the federal level, despite a number of U.S. states having passed laws legalizing its use in some form, which is confusing. It's that American legal system. But what I find interesting, we always talk about legalizing marijuana because of the amount of tax that it can bring in. 10% tax on sales in Ohio, but we, I guess, would have VAT on our sales of marijuana, right? 15, and if it goes to the right place, it's interesting that they're making specific rules where that tax will go to. It's not just going to fall into the state tax brackets and go to roads and constructions and all those kind of things. So that's what they're doing in Ohio. What are the current states of cannabis in South Africa, I wonder? And did you see this story? I've only seen the headline. Transnet officials, we were talking about Transnet yesterday, and we were talking about how they're struggling. Transnet officials now have had their pensions blocked after they paid 10,000% more for straws than they should have. Straws, they were paying 29 Rand 29 for a straw. One straw for a Coke. 29 Rand 29. And they approved it. Somebody approved it. Very confused. All right, let's go to this. We're going to take a quick break, and then we will hear what Naledi Pandor has been saying.
It's about a
listening to Jon Gericke on the Station of the Year.
18 minutes past 3 o'clock, South Africa's International Relations and Cooperation Minister, Naledi Pandor, has called for the ICC, the International Criminal Court, to issue a warrant of arrest for Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and other senior decision makers for alleged contraventions of international law in relation to the ongoing war in Gaza. She also accused Hamas of violating international humanitarian law. Let's hear what Pandor had to say yesterday in Parliament.
The actions that we are witnessing daily by Israel are a violation of international law, including the United Nations Charter, the Geneva Convention, and all its protocols. In its attacks on and kidnapping of innocent civilians, Hamas has also violated international law. While we express horror at the violence, it is critical that we acknowledge that the illegal occupation of Palestine by Israel for several decades has led to bitter hatred and increased violence, and that this violence is not the first violence the people of Palestine have experienced. It has been going on for decades and decades and decades, and nothing we can say will obliterate that fact. However, Chairperson, the murder of children, of women, and the aged by Israel is an act that should have resulted in the International Criminal Court issuing an immediate arrest warrant for key decision makers, including Mr. Netanyahu, who is responsible for violations of international criminal law.
Well, let's hear from Zane Dango, Director General of the DG of the Department of International Relations and Cooperation. Zane, thank you very much for joining us. Good afternoon. Some strong words there from the minister. She's sticking with that and calling for both sides to be looked at by the ICC.
Yes, good afternoon. I think the minister is absolutely correct. I think there's already an investigation ongoing since the last major assault on Gaza in 2014 by the ICC. The problem is that investigation has been very slow, and with the latest atrocities, what we are asking, together with many others in the world, is that the prosecutor of the ICC takes the investigation into war crimes, whether in Israel or in Gaza or the West Bank, quite seriously. But I think with the kind of atrocities we're seeing in Gaza, that the investigations need to be sped up. We think that even if it means that even though there is an ongoing investigation, the current investigation is a result of a self-referral by the Palestinian Authority around about 2015. We think that right now other state parties should make a demand that the investigations proceed with speed.
Before we move on with that, I hate whataboutism, but the same minister wasn't a fan of the ICC when it came to Russia and Ukraine.
I don't think that's accurate. I think if you look at the actions with Russia, Ukraine immediately, DERCO immediately issued a legal opinion that said we have to abide by our national, international obligations. And that's why President Putin actually did not come to the summit. We responded to the calls by international community, even many of them were not state parties to the ICC, asking South Africa to abide by its obligations to national, international law. And you would see DERCO's statements, including from myself, saying we will abide by this. So I do think that we've complied, and we stayed in the ICC because we think it's an important institution that will deal with impunity at an international level, especially for crimes that are of great concern to the international community. And the crimes taking place in Gaza at the moment is of international concern to the international community.
South Africa pulling the diplomatic crew out of Israel, is that a sign that there is more support from South Africa for Palestine than there is for Israel?
Well, I don't think this is a situation where you can have more support for one side or the other. The one is an occupying power. An occupying power is not an allegation by South Africa. It's a statement of fact by the International Court of Justice. And it's an occupying power since at least 1967. And it's not a situation where two countries are at war with each other. This is a situation where there's an ongoing conflict by virtue of an active occupation being in place since 1967 against all numbers of Security Council resolution and General Assembly resolutions South Africa has taken a position that the occupation must end, the violence associated with the occupation must end. It's been the position since at least the dawn of democracy in South Africa. And so that's why we're calling for an end to the occupation, and we're calling for credible negotiations towards a two-state solution. I think the withdrawal of the diplomats, and if one sees that other countries are doing the same, including Jordan, who had signed an armistice with Israel, their neighbor, is a sign that the current state, the current atrocities in Gaza needed some kind of censure from the international community. And, withdrawing of diplomats is a form of censure in the international community. And this is done when one gets the sense that negotiations at this stage is not going to happen. So that's what we're signaling. And I don't think that one should equivocate. This is not an asymmetrical struggle of two equal powers. You're dealing with a very powerful army in the IDF, one of the strongest in the Middle East, one of the best funded globally. It's a nuclear power. And you're dealing with essentially, an occupied people that's using some weaponry, but it's one that you can say is essentially asymmetrical conflict. It's a very asymmetrical conflict where the power dynamics are very different.
Zain, I'm going to speak to the Jewish Board of Deputies in a moment. One of their biggest issues is this alleged phone call that the minister made to Hamas leadership to pledge South Africa's support, with Hamas thanking South Africa. What is the facts behind that? Did she make the phone call?
The facts behind that, and I'm glad you're asking that question. The authorities in the political wing of Hamas had asked for a call from the minister, or to receive a call. That was done maybe a week before the actual call was made. It actually coincided with the first sort of major attacks on Hamas. The call came through the normal channels. The request came through our desk in the Middle East, essentially through one of our officials, was a former ambassador in Ramallah, so they obviously know who he is. He then called me and said, can we take this call? I put this to the minister. She said she'll consider it. Once the scale of attacks became more intense, they did call me because they couldn't get through to the minister. We asked them, can we get their number if we need to make that call? And the reason the minister then dialed from her phone is because they couldn't get through. The only discussion the minister had with Mr. Hania, who is the representative of Hamas in Qatar, fully funded by the Qatari government, official office in Qatar, and essentially, if one listens to the Qatari government explanations to the U.S. government last week, is that the reason why they have that office in Qatar funded by the Qatari government is because this was on the request by the U.S. government, who wanted a channel to Hamas. So the call that the minister is making, that was made to the minister, and we have to correct this, was not out of the ordinary. It also came in the same week that we had discussions with organizations keen on the humanitarian support, and we needed to find out what the humanitarian needs are. And one does not speak about the humanitarian needs outside of the authority in that space. And in that authority in that space at that time was Hamas. Minister did not under any circumstances support the attack by Hamas on Israeli civilians. In fact, she's on record as criticizing it, and in fact has called for Hamas to be investigated for war crimes as well.
Okay.
And, let me finish. I think the idea that is being peddled that the minister has Hamas on speed dial is libelous and is actually very, very wrong.
Just quickly, before we go to the Jewish Board of Deputies, they're saying that the angle of South Africa, they are seeing incitement to hatred against the Jewish community, and has reached such levels to compromise explicit calls on public platforms for Jews to be attacked in their homes. What is Gericke's views on the Jewish people of South Africa?
Any call for Jewish hatred is to be condemned by us and to be condemned by the South African government. And I haven't seen much of that. Where it is happening, we will condemn it. I do see what we're seeing. For example, if one looks at the massive march in New York, and it's been confirmed, that was organized by the South African, not the South African Jews for Free Palestine, they did a march here, but the International Jewish Force for Peace. So, to try and portray this conflict as being linked to ethnicity or confessional preference is not helpful. I think that what we must do is ensure that we deal with the atrocities at hand, both by Hamas and the intense atrocities being committed by the IDF. And any forms of hate speech that leads to anti-Jewish sentiment or anti-Islamic sentiment is wrong, and it actually is really off the mark in terms of what this situation is all about. It's an occupation. It's got nothing to do with confessional preferences. It's really about an occupying power, an occupied people, resistance, war crimes on both sides.
Okay, Zain, we're going to leave it there. Thank you very much. Zain Dango is the Director General of the Department of International Relations and Cooperation. Listening to that was Zev Krengel, Vice President of the SA Jewish Board of Deputies. Zev, because I wanted to get all those answers from Zain, if you don't mind just hanging around, we just got to do headlines and traffic and sport, and then we'll give you proper time to answer. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to give you the opportunity to reply to that. Is that all right with you?
Sure.
All right, just we got a minute. Quickly, your views on what you heard quickly from Zain, and we'll go into it in more details after headlines.
Yes, I mean, the first one is RCC. I mean, maybe the Southern government and the DIRCO. They think the international courts and international treaties is like a departmental store. They choose when they want to use it and what they want to take. So, I mean, I always think the only good thing, if they got that with Netanyahu being, put on an arrest warrant, maybe then you would get an invite to South Africa. Like we invited Bashir and we allowed him to come, and only because of the DA took it to court, they knew that if they did the exact same thing with Putin, they were going to be forced, or we were going to have, as a South African country,
the 50 overs after winning the toss and electing to bat first against the Netherlands. Ben Stokes top scored with 108 of 84 balls, and England, as you know, they're already eliminated, while Netherlands need to win to keep a very slim chance of advancing to the semi-finals, but I don't see that one happening. But in terms of the Netherlands, now they're sitting on 21 for 2. They need 319 runs with 247 balls remaining to win, and they are in the 8th over. Meanwhile, Titans Cricket have announced the launch of the Global Cricket Tournament, which will take place from the 4th to the 6th of January. The tournament features 3 teams, each made up of 4 marquee players, 4 rookies and 3 under-23s and 2 internationals. The 3 teams taking part in the first edition of the tournament are Eastern Storm, Lions and Titans, while some of the marquee players include Snow Luce, Masabata Klaas and Anneke Bosch. Then moving on to rugby, Dwayne Vermeulen has announced his international retirement after the veteran number 8 helped the Springboks win back-to-back World Cup titles. He played 76 tests over 11 seasons and scored 3 tries. In football, CAF A licensed coaching course returns to South Africa on Monday, with notable PSL coaches headlining the class of 2023-24 season. After a 6-year wait, SAFA Technical Director Walter Steenbach revealed that the first phase of the CAF A license coaching course will begin this month. Gavin Hunt of Supersport United, Cape Town City's Eric Tinkler and Steve Barker of Stellenbosch are among the 25 coaches chosen from a pool of 65 applicants.
I need to commend the coaches, both in South Africa and in Africa, who has shown a lot of interest in the CAF A license that will be hosted by the South African Football Association. Up to date, we have received about 65 applications, and we have whittled them down to 25. That will start next week, the 13th of November, to start the CAF A license course.
Looking at this group, does it also show you the interest that has been there for a long time from some of those coaches?
Yeah, there's been a lot of respect, let alone interest, of senior coaches, who have shown a lot of humility to come and grace the course. Gavin Hunt, who's a multiple championship winner, Eric Tinkler, Bafana Stalwart, of course, also a serial cup winner in South Africa, Stephen Barker, who will be part of this course, and then that shows the respect, that senior coaches, have afforded the association and of course CAF, for them to be able to be on this platform.
In terms of Hunt's enrollment in the course, it implies that he'll be able to sit on the bench for the CAF Confederations group state matches later this month. Meanwhile, Steenbach claims that in addition to the Premier Division, there has been a focus on National First Division coaches and other structures. Elsewhere, Al Ittihad have sacked Nuno Santo after reports suggest that the Portuguese manager had a fallout with Ballon d'Or winner Karim Benzema, as well as a run of poor results. The Saudi Pro League side suffered a 2-0 defeat in the Asian Champions League yesterday to Iraqi side Air Force Club, and they have also won just 6 of their 12 league games so far this season. In marathon news, 2-time Comrades Marathon champion Tete Dijana has expressed excitement about the increased prize money for next year's race. The uprun in 2024 will be the 49th edition, with the organizers hoping to accommodate a maximum of 23,000 participants. Dijana was awarded 500,000 for winning the ultimate human race this past June, and an amount to be increased by 10% in 2024.
It means a lot, because it's very important ukuthi imali inyuke, because it makes a difference to our lives. Yeah.
Well, with that said, it's a wrap from my side for now. I'll have more in the next hour. For SAfm Sport, I'm Dumi Nkgapele.
It's about a little more than just an X on that ballot paper. It's about SAfGov knowing what to
What was that sound? Listening to Jon Gericke on SAfm.
21, or making it 19 minutes to 4 o'clock. You with SAfm. John in for Eldrin. It's beyond the headline. Continuing our conversation about South Africa's International Relations and Cooperations Minister calling for the ICC to issue a warrant of arrest for Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, also accusing Hamas of violating international humanitarian law. We heard just before the news, Zev Krengel, Vice President of the SA Jewish Board of Deputies, saying that South Africa can't just use the ICC like a what was the word? Like a grocery store. Zev, is that the word you used?
Well, yes, they choose and they want who they want to do. If they like you, then they don't agree with the RCC. If they like you, they don't agree with the RCC. If they don't like you, then they want the RCC to arrest you. But that's unfortunately our foreign policy today.
I asked the last question I had for Zane Dangor, the DG of DIRCO. I was asking him about how Jewish people in South Africa are feeling hatred against the community. Tell us more about that.
So first of all, I take it as a massive insult. I mean, he's not Jewish. He knows nothing about it. Then he tries to say, he's got Jews for Palestine. It reminds me of the apartheid era where we were taught by the apartheid government. Millions of blacks loved the apartheid government because look at the Bantu state, and we had Lucas Magope. They used to raise them out all the time. So that's what Zane does with a couple of Jews. The majority of Jews in South Africa have seen a spike of anti-Semitism of almost 300% in the last month. 300%. Death to the Jews. We have had Tagad threatening us. That's a terror organization that has blown up civilians of South Africa that have gone to jail and are out of jail, and they get beautiful welcomes outside the American consulate. So that's what's happening. So they mustn't tell me in my community that I do represent the vast majority, democratically elected. Democrats got a much bigger majority of community than the ANC's got of the country. And we know when we are being under attack, and we know when we're not being, and we don't appreciate someone who's not from the Jewish faith, someone who has no idea, who's never engaged with us, saying how we feel. I find it a hell of an insult. What I can tell you is because of the government's continuous bashing of the Jewish state, because of Minister Pandor continuously bashing the Jewish state at all times, it has 100% equated into a hatred for Jews in South Africa, and that's on her hands. That's on the government hands.
We did hear, or I just wanted confirmation, has the government, as far as you know, engaged with the Israeli ambassador in South Africa yet?
Oh, they never engage in him. So they like to dress him down. They like to get upset with him, and then she equates him also to the American ambassador. What I said on TV a while ago, the hatred for Israel, actually they hate America. Our government, the ANC government, hates America. But America's too big for them to bash. So then they go for the baby brother, which is Israel. Because you can hate Israel and you can dress them down and you can take away your people from Israel, from your embassy. If you hate America, be strong, be brave, and say, you're America, we cut in town and we were drawing our ambassador from Washington. But that's what they do. It's a continuous same game. They just, the level of hatred for real democracies, for countries that have human rights, which allow gays, which allow all different minorities to live with the rule of law, was called the hatred. They just hate it. Our government, our foreign ministry loves Iran, loves Russia, loves North Korea, loves Hamas. That's unfortunately where we live in. And until South African people realize what the road our government's taking us down, we get alienated more and more every single time of the conflict. Government loves to quite diverse, and the ICC. I mean, Russia does an offensive war, bombing civilians every single day in Kiev, mercilessly killing women, killing children, And we go and visit Russia. We do all stuff with Russia. We don't withdraw our ambassador from Moscow. We give more money and we take their arms out of the lady arm, which they have admitted. I mean, it's just the double standard in South African government is mind-blowing. But you can't actually believe it's fact. You can't actually believe it actually happened. You think it's a satire.
Zev, what is the South African Jewish Board of Deputies' views on some of these horrific things we're seeing coming out of Gaza?
So, look, no one was, unlike the minister, unlike the government, I hate to see anybody dying on any side. I hate to see people suffering. I hate it. We literally don't support and we don't condone any loss of civilian life. The question is who is to blame. That's the big thing. Israel leaves. There's no occupying force in Gaza. It didn't exist since 2005. Once again, it's the memory of the South African government. It didn't exist. Israel took out all its citizens. The synagogues were burnt by the people in Gaza. All the greenhouses were gone. From 2005 to 2007, it was pretty good. Gaza and Israel was very nice, no occupying force. But in 2007, once again, selective memory from our previous caller.
Zev, see if you can stick to the answer. What do you say about the atrocities that are currently happening in Gaza? We got the history lesson. We know the history lesson.
Yes, okay. So the atrocities today are totally squarely put on Hamas. They have literally, for 15 years, built 375 miles of tunnels and not one built.
They're not killing them. They're not killing themselves, Zev.
No, but what they are doing is they want their own people to be killed. So what they do is they don't protect their own people. Then they go to another country and do the most horrific, barbaric murders, and then they harm their own people. They are doing it. They are doing it because they could stop the killings tomorrow. They could stop the bombings tomorrow.
So could Israel.
Give back the hostages.
So could Israel.
Israel can't. Now, Israel can't do that at the moment because Israel has been attacked by the enemy. It can't do it. We actually can't. Israel can't do it. It can't stop now until it gets its hostages back and until it can secure its border. You can't have, you're right. In the Second World War, the Allies could have stopped the war. They could have stopped the war in 1942, in 1941. If the Germans take England, they could have done it. You're right. You can't do it when you're defending your people. You can't do it. There's one difference. Then you see that 7,000 rockets are going over. They claim there's no water. They claim there's no electricity. But boy, oh boy, they've got enough rocket powers. Stop the rockets. Give the hostages back. Everything stops. Everything stops immediately. Build up your people and stop using your own people as cannon fodder for your Islamic jihadist beliefs. And it's there. One thing with Hamas, they don't say one thing and do another. Unlike our government, Hamas tells you what they want. They want the death to the Jews. They want the death to the Jewish state.
All right.
They tell you what they want.
We're going to leave it there. Zane Dango, thank you very much. Director General of the Department of International... sorry, not even close. That was Zev Krengle, the Vice President of the SA Jewish Board of Deputies. Thank you very much.
Open the Absa Cash Invest Tracker Jon Gericke on SAfm.
John in for Eldrin is beyond the headline on SAfm. Let's get a quick update on what's happening at the Senzo Meyiwa trial. Defense counsel Sandile Mshololo has begun her cross-examination of investigating officer Sergeant Vuzimuzi Mukhane at the trial at the High Court in Pretoria. The state subjected to a line of questioning. Mshololo had asked Mukhane to read parts of a document which police officers need to complete when interviewing a suspect, whether they're arrested or not. The defense is challenging the admissibility of pointing out and the confession statements allegedly made by accused 1 and 2. Watching the proceedings, Pearl Makubane joins us now. Pearl, quick update. What happened in court today?
Good afternoon. Well, when Sandile Mshololo began her cross-examination of the witness, she just went through the document you were talking about. And this is a document that police officers are supposed to sign when they're interviewing suspects. However, the state said that document is only relevant when there's a taking down of the warning statement, which the current trial within a trial is not busy with, and therefore they were well within their rights to be talking to the suspect and interviewing them. And the specific accused is Gongani Ntanzi, who's accused number 2, following his arrest in June 2020.
Did things get heated in the court today?
Yes, we had a moment where the witness, Mr. Sergeant Mukhane, asked the court to keep certain documents that he was asked to bring for the court and the defense perusal. This pertains to a number of cases that they are currently investigating, and Mukhane raised issues around safety of the witnesses should the information get in the wrong hands. He spoke about the fact that some witnesses or people that are involved in the case have been shot, there have been threats, and some have been kidnapped, and therefore they need to ensure the safety of these witnesses. However, Judge Ratam Khateng, because he had asked for those cases, said that they might not be shared publicly, but ordered for them to be shared with the accused so they know the contents of the ongoing cases as well.
I saw, maybe I read wrong, there was an issue, somebody was writing an article about the judge. Is the judge handling these procedures well?
Well, it's not for us to comment, because then we'll be accused of being, commentators and analysts. And ours is just to tell what transpired in court without having our personal opinions. But he does make remarks himself to say that he's been accused of not being fair and things like that. And he continues to read parts of the Constitution that allows him to interject when things are moving slow or in the wrong direction.
Yeah, because it started off so strong with him pushing things to go forward. I asked you this yesterday. Do we see an end in sight of the trial within a trial?
Well, now we had, all the defense are done cross-examining the investigating officer, Mukhane. However, the state is still going through, evidence that emerged during the cross-examination, and they have asked to continue with Mukhane tomorrow just to clarify some issues that could have been misunderstood during the cross-examination.
All right, Paul Magubani, thank you very much. Updates from the Pretoria High Court, keeping an update on what's happening at the Senzo Meyiwa trial.
You are listening to Jon Gericke on the Station of the Year.
7 minutes to 4. In those 7 minutes, let's find out what's happening in the city of Johannesburg, because they have filed an application for leave to appeal the decision of the High Court in relation to the appointment of city manager Floyd Brink. They believe there are a number of legal grounds for concern in the High Court judgments, where they think an appeal court might reach a different conclusion. City spokesperson is Mlimandlela Ndamasi, Director of Communications at the City of Johannesburg. Mlimandlela, thank you very much for joining us. What are the legal grounds, these number of legal grounds that you think are there?
Well, good afternoon, and good afternoon to your listeners. As you will have noted, the judgment yesterday focused itself concisely on the procedural aspects of the appointment of the city manager of the city of Johannesburg, precisely on the issue that it has ruled that the city did not display that there was urgency in a report that was brought before council, and that particular report did not comply with the rules of council in as far as urgent matters to be tabled before council must be considered. It also spoke to what is Section 54A of the Municipal Structures Act, which was a point that was contested and conceded during arguments in the court process itself with regards to the requirements that apply to this particular position. And Section 54A has previously been a subject of a constitutional court challenge, and there has been a finding in that regard. And in this instance, it never applied. However, it is cited in the judgment that has now been handed down and indicates that the appointment of the city manager was unlawful, invalid, and unconstitutional. Therefore, the legal advisors of the city, including senior counsel who has been consulting for the city, have identified that the court may have erred in a number of areas in this regard and have submitted a notice of application for leave to appeal the judgment.
What does this mean for the residents of Johannesburg?
Well, what it means for the residents of Johannesburg is that the current government in Johannesburg is doing all that it can to ensure that you have a stable administration within the city of Johannesburg, an administration that is occupied by people who are qualified, who are skilled, who carry the necessary experience and expertise, and who are able to deliver on the mandate of a city such as Johannesburg. You must remember that before this administration came into government in Johannesburg, you were sitting with a situation where under the DA multi-party coalition, there was no city manager, there was no chief financial officer in the city, and there was no chief operating officer in the city. Now, those are the three most critical positions and senior positions in the administration of any sphere of local government. Now, to run a city without those three positions being filled is a recipe for disaster, and that's what was occurring under the DA. And hence, this particular administration took it upon itself to prioritize the filling of those vacancies so that it can ensure that, one, we deliver services to the residents of the city, but two, we ensure that good governance is applicable and is applied throughout all levels in the city.
So does Floyd Brink remain city manager until this appeal that you've taken to the appeal court is settled?
Well, the principle in law is that once you file a notice of application for leave to appeal, it stays all orders that were contained in the judgment that was handed down yesterday. That same principle applies in this matter, which means Mr. Brink remains in his position as acting city manager until such a time when the notice for leave to be appealed can be heard by the judge, and a decision is therefore ruled in the matter at that particular point.
Do we have a timeline for this limbo status?
Well, the current administration would want this matter resolved as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Hence, yesterday it did not waste time. It filed papers immediately with regards to the notice of application for leave to appeal. It is now in the hands of the judge to provide a date that is suitable to the applicants and the respondents with regards to the appeal, and the city will then take the process on from there.
Is this not the city just kicking the can down the road, knowing that it's inevitable?
Well, we wouldn't want to kick any can down the road, because you must remember that this is at the detriment of residents. We would want the city to function, we would want the city to service the residents of Johannesburg. But you must also remember that individuals have rights, including the city manager. The city also has a responsibility to protect and to defend its decisions in this regard, so that we do not, by complying without looking at the legal implications, compromise the ability of the city to render the services that it ought to render.
Lela, why not just follow the process? Say, well, okay, the city manager is now relieved of his duties. You've got 10 days to appoint an acting city manager within 10 days. And why doesn't Floyd Brink just stand for that position again? Why not follow the process 100%? If maybe at least then Joburg can go, well, okay, we know that the process has been followed correctly this time.
Well, it's a matter for conversation, but again, I must say that Mr. Brink has rights and the city as well has rights. And
Sure.
It is not an anomaly in our country that courts have previously made decisions and those decisions have been found to be wanting by upper courts. So you must allow the process, and you must allow people to pursue the rights that they have to be able to ensure that the decisions that they ultimately arrive at are decisions that are sound in law and are decisions that are adequate for the exercise of the responsibilities that they carry. It would be an easy and simple solution, I agree. Unfortunately, it cannot be exercised in that manner in this particular instance, because you must remember that there are rights of individuals, and in the city's arguments and presentations before court, it does believe that the processes were followed and the procedures were followed, and that those procedures are valid and that a different court could come to a different determination. Maybe to share with you as well, by the way, is that the report that the current administration presented before court is not a report of a process that was run by the current administration. It is the previous administration under the DA that actually advertised, it recruited, it selected, it interviewed Mr. Brink along with other candidates, and it is their report that recommended Mr. Brink as an appointable candidate and as a second preferred candidate for this particular position of the city manager. So this administration, as a successor in law, merely took a report that already existed, which was already advanced by the previous administration, and submitted it to council for consideration and approval. So it has been considered by the DA's own legal team in court that their arguments that Mr. Brink is unqualified, is unsuitable, etc., does not hold water, because in any event, it is the very same DA administration which in 2016 appointed Mr. Brink as the Chief Operations Officer of the city, having noted the qualifications and the skills he brought into the city administration at the time.
All right, Director of Communications for the City of Johannesburg, Nglandlela Ndamasi, thank you very much for joining us. It's exactly, well, it's 1 minute past 4 o'clock. Let's get the latest news with Greg House.
to make Lever Cup debut for Team Europe in 2024. More details at 4:30.
SAfm, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. We start in Pretoria with delays on the M1 going north. Now, there were some roadworks after Montana. That's been lifted, but there's a crash recovery underway before Montana. So N1 from Stormful Road up towards Sefako Makato remains heavily backed up. Looking okay between Durban and Pietermaritzburg today. The section between Ashburton and Cato Ridge flowing nicely both ways. The Mhlanga Komashu section through the works also looking okay. Not too bad between Spaghetti Junction and Umgeni Road. So it's not a bad start to drive time through the Durban and KZN region. Cape Town, heavy pressure on the N1 outbound. It's a broken down truck between Durban Road and Old Oak Road in the Belleville area, and the backlog of that traffic right through to the Goodwood area. Rob Byrne, SAfm Traffic.
SAfm 104 to 107 nationwide, leading the conversation.
Gautrain is for the legends who make moves to save and pay from as little as 35 Rand from Hatfield to Centurion. Is for Ikoko, who steady chill on neutral on a downhill just to save fuel. So when it comes to travel, make moves that save and pay from as little as 35 Rand from Hatfield to Centurion Station. Gautrain, for people on the move.
10 of the world's greatest cricket nations are back on the pitch to argue about the next champions.
Five-time global champs Australia are searching for their 6th title.
But two-time winners, India, believe their home fans deserve the 3rd title.
While the defending champions England are more interested in back-to-back victories.
And Proteas are eager to reach the final.
Is it time for the new champs?
Witness the incredible game from 5 October to 19 November on S3 and SABC+.
Subscription fees do not apply. SABC Sport is the official broadcaster of the ICC Men's ODI Cricket World Cup, India 2023.
Hashtag the journey of the ultimate glory.
For the love of the game.
Beyond the headline on SAfm, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m. You are listening to Jon Gericke on SAfm.
Johnny for Eldrin, good afternoon. If you've just joined us now, welcome to Beyond the Headline. Plenty to talk about. Man, we've had some fun chats already. Still coming up, we are going to hear about the controversy around the design of the South African flag. That, for some odd reason, foreigners overseas when they're watching rugby don't know that the red's on top. It's not that difficult. Red's on top, blue's on the bottom. Why? Because the sun sets on the top and the sea is on the bottom. I know it maybe has other meanings. It's the way I remember it in my head. The sea's on the bottom. Blue's on the bottom. That's the way the flag flies. But yeah, there's controversy around who designed the flag and who should get credit for designing that flag. And then later on, good news in the tourism sector. Things are booming there. And also maybe some bad news, and we'll find out what it means. The National Treasury has rejected a funding request made by the SABC. 1.5 billion Rand request was made by the public broadcaster to support the coverage of the 2024 elections. What does that mean for education? What does that mean for people getting the news and the information if the SABC can't supply it around the country? That's coming up just after 5 o'clock today.
SAfm values your views. Be an active citizen.
And those views now on WhatsApp 0614 104 107. Plenty on the Durko discussion about Israel and Palestine. First, City of Johannesburg.
Good afternoon to SAfm and its listeners. I hear that guy defending Brink and taking the matter to appeal and saying how much he has rights. The question is, at whose cost? Who's paying for all these appeals? Is it at personal cost because he's saying that Brink has got rights? So is it at personal cost or is it now at the cost of taxpayers and everybody else? That's why they can take this matter right up wherever they want. Would they have done the same if it was at personal cost? Savage.
Good afternoon, Jon Gericke, still here in Cape Town. John, I just wanted to say about Naledi Mpando, Minister for International Affairs, calling to International Court to warrant of arrest to Netanyahu. I feel like South Africa is doing double standard. They should also call for Putin to be arrested, or even people that have been convicted on apartheid regime, none of them was even convicted to International Criminal Court, where the UN declare apartheid as crime against humanity in South Africa. But I don't understand, honestly. Can anyone explain to me why the minister is doing that? She wants to conflict South Africa with Israel? As we're going to win. It's you in Cape Town. Thank you.
Good afternoon, John. This is Makwarela Chinyazo from Peambo. You know, I agree with Mrs. Pando. ICC must issue a warrant of arrest against Netanyahu and his government. But we all know that it won't happen. Why? It's because such institution is controlled by Western superpower, the main backers of Netanyahu, those who are promoting or inciting this violence. And again, it is easy for ICC to issue a warrant of arrest against Mr. Putin because there's no fairness in this.
SAfm values your views. Be an active citizen.
It's 12 minutes past 4. The controversy around the design of the South African flag is far from over. A senior official in the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture in Makanda, Hastings Mqai, has taken the legal route to force the government to recognize him as the designer of South Africa's post-apartheid flag. Mqai is set to meet the office of the state attorney in Pretoria this month. Spokesperson for Hastings is Bandile Magibili and joins us now. Bandile, thank you very much for joining us. Is Hastings the designer of the flag?
Yes, thank you for hosting me. Yes, Mr. Hastings Mqai is the designer of the South African flag and other national symbols.
But I always thought it was Fred Brownell. He got the credit for that.
Yeah, let me first give context to understand this whole battle and how it started. Mr. Frederick Brownell was the chairperson of the selection board when the call was made for artists to make submissions of designs of the South African flag, so that part of the terms of reference that I got told by Mr. Mqai was that they were supposed to unite the political parties that were rivals at the time during apartheid so that they can come together under one symbol, which is the South African flag. So after getting exposed to the works he has done as an artist for South Africa, I started being interested to document some of the works that he has done so that we can also have black artists that we can refer to as artists, not only focus on your Picassos, Rena and all these white other artists, without having our own artists that we can really relate to as artists on the ground. So after writing that book, I started doing lectures around 2013 at Rhodes University, where I spoke about some of the works, including the flag. But Mr. Brownell was still alive at the time. We've done a couple of interviews long before he died in 2019 to say that he is not the designer, but he never challenged that until in 2019 when he died, when the government started praising him for being a great patriot and blah, blah, blah. Then it is people on social media who saw the plight that one was pushing on the ground of getting recognition for black artists for the works that they've done. So government started to issue a statement to say Mqai must not be listened to, he's lying, he doesn't even look like a designer and stuff like that. So from there, since the plight was about embracing black artists in particular, the flag issue was not an issue. The issue was documenting his work. So they said Mqai must make a submission to the heraldry department in Pretoria. We did the submission around 2019 and we only received the response in April of 2021 from the minister Natim Tetwa, where he said there's 3 designs he got from the archives of Mqai. They didn't get the design of the one, and these ones does not actually come anywhere close to what Mqai claims to have designed. But now the interesting thing is, in the design that they gave us back from the 5, they only gave us 3. And it's written on the design. The colors that are there, the green, blue, black are all there. So would it be, is it an irony that, I don't know how to put it, but is it really a coincidence? Is it a coincidence that the flag that is flying has 6 colors and the one that the state claims to be designed by Fred Brownell, the person was receiving the design, was also 6 colors? And then when we ask them for the terms of reference, they don't give us the term of reference. But fortunately for me, I do have like a soundbite of where Brownell was sitting in front of flag designs which had maybe some would have like 2 colors, some 3, but I don't recall seeing one with 6 colors. But now that this one that is flying 6 colors and the one that Mkai submitted also has 6 colors.
Have you got original drawings that Hastings made where the flag looks like the current one?
Yeah, they did give me a replica because the question is, a lot of people, they ask that do you have copies?
Yeah.
At the time, we do not have the technology that we have now to have copies. And by the way, I must also give context that Mr. Mkai did a lot of designs like your SATO logos and
have we lost him?
From the that was
Sorry, Bandile,
no.
Bandile, you're
He's
breaking
the
up.
one who was making.
You're breaking up. Sorry, let's start again. Sorry, you broke up a lot there. Let's start again. You were saying?
No, I was saying to give context also about the issue of proof that he has copies of what he sent. He does not have copies of what he sent because at the time, the work that he was doing in terms of designing, he was getting instructions from the ANC. And he was not supposed to be that he's the one who designed these symbols, such as your SAT was any other logos, which he has designed for the country. So now we actually made a submission to.
All right, is that our network giving out? Yep, that's the network giving out, unfortunately. Bandile Makhabile is the spokesperson to Hastings and Mkai, who claims that he is the designer of the flag and not Fred Brownell. Brownell's reportedly part of the panel that chose the flag and was said to have recommended the chosen design of the flag. The state has opposed the case. The spokesperson, as you heard, says the planned meeting showed that they were on the right track. A person who receives the design, they say, of the artist can't be the same person who was credited for the design. Mkai should be recognized for his work, and history should be documented correctly. And he's been overseas to talk about this design as well. Rhodes and the Free State Universities also provided the opportunity to tackle the issue. So that's something we'll keep an eye on.
Have you seen our upgraded currency with enhanced security features? Identify
the number. We got a couple that have come through and a few more as well that we're still going through. So drop us a voice note 0614104107.
Hello, John. You know, the diplomatic principles of South Africa, which is very much selective, sometimes it depends on which side is their bread buttered. They never called for Vlad to be arrested. Vlad killed kids, many children in Ukraine, but nothing was said about him being arrested, as much as they called him out, but then there was never mention of him being arrested. I would just go now domestically, continentally as well, in Sudan. There's a tribal war going on there. Have they ever called whoever who are accountable for killing so many civilians in Sudan? None whatsoever. So this, I condemn what happens, what Israel did in Palestine, fully so. But then this selective diplomacy of ANC, actually, not even South African government, ANC, is very, very troubling, and it just makes one upset because there are so many wars going on in the world, but then they never called out any of them to be arrested. This is the
Good day, John. I'm Jon Gericke here. Your guest there is talking, what they're talking there, it's actually, I was going to say another word, but this is not fair. We are taking decisions as a nation that align with ANC. Any nation, any state that ANC doesn't benefit, they go against. They couldn't condemn Russia because they benefit from it. Right now, if you remember the story of Lalela Mswane, the Miss South Africa, the story of Orlando Pirates, and the story of former Justice Chief Mogoeng. ANC has always had a problem on Israel, and this is going to cost us a lot because people think we are going against the state, and we are not going against a state here. We are going against God, and that it's a problem for our nation. Our nation is 85% a Christian community. So why are they doing that? Why not let Pounder have to go that far?
SAfm values your views. Be an active citizen.
Let's take a call, 086 000 2032. Nkululeko, good afternoon.
Yes, John. John, I just want to have a quick one. The ANC in KZN, the Sponiso Duma and Nomusa Dube Becker, I think that Becker, man, it's denting the ANC. Yes, I'm 37 years old. I've known ANC as a government since I was young. But now there's a problem. ANC has lost everything that it stands for. Yes, I'm young. I've been voting for the ANC since 2000, I think 2006 or 2009. But I've been voting for the ANC. I'm young. Yes, I'm young. But the ANC has been in power since I was here in head. But now this thing that is happening between Miss Dube and Sponiso Duma is ending the ANC in KZN. They are going to lose. You see, the IFP is playing on this thing. That the ANC, they don't see. Last time it was the Action SA who took the ANC to public with regards to the funds for the summer awards. Now they are doing it again with the Springboks. They say no, this premier was shorter than Elizabeth. Elizabeth was not supposed. Like they are trying to dodge and dive. That there's a friction between them. Now, please, man.
But why do personalities matter? Why don't you look at their policies and their governmental history instead when it comes to deciding on who you want to be in charge?
No. Yes, you see, in South Africa, we always follow the personalities before the policy.
Is that not the problem? Is that not the problem there then? That you're so focused on personalities and who's holding a trophy and who's at certain awards and things, then you are looking at who's picking up the rubbish and who's making sure the cities are well run and the police and the trains.
Yes, sir. Yes, I understand, Sir John. But you see, in this case, it's a chairperson of the ruling party and the premier. That is also part of the ruling party. So they should be working together, these people.
Oh, they should, but they're not. So doesn't that mean you should change your vote?
Yeah, but
if you're unhappy.
Mr. Duma is overdoing it. I think I will take a stand now. Mr. Duma is overdoing it. He should let the premier do some of the things that should be done by the premier. He must take the seat back because, yes, we understand he's the chairperson of the ANC. But he must not use his position because that creates a rift between us as supporters. Even when it comes to the way they operate in government. You see, every time Duma comes up, he condemns something, it's just all over that guy. It's all over. He don't know what is it. He's a minister of something else, but he's acting like a premier at the same time. I don't know, man. He must be called to order.
All right.
Yes.
Nkululeko calling him to order. He says you can give us a call as well. 086 000 2032.
#SAfmBTH.
According to the latest World Security Report, chief security officers have flagged load shedding and social unrest as the biggest disruptors to private security systems in South Africa. The research outlines the threat of social unrest is due to the contestation of public spaces as a response to the misuse of public resources, read corruption, and fraud. The report also unpacks regional trends on the continent, including the rise of internal threats from the recent coups that have taken place in the last 12 months. The report surveys 2,000 security actors across 30 countries around the world. Let's understand what all of that means. Tony Boertus is National Administrator of the Security Association of South Africa. Unpacker, there's a lot of numbers that have come out of this report. Bottom line is fraud, corruption, and inequality is part of the problem. Tony?
Hi, good afternoon.
Hi there. So unpack it for us.
Yeah, the security industry is obviously concerned about the crime trends, predominantly at the moment, load shedding, creating opportunities for criminals to do things they would not do if there had not been load shedding.
Like what?
Domestic robberies, break-ins, people being accosted in dark areas where there's no light after hours. Opportunities have been created which criminals will definitely make use of, and we can see that. Okay. And unfortunately, the SAPS is grossly undercapacitated. They do not have the staff levels, whereas the private security industry as an entity with more than 600,000 security officers in the country, according to records by the regulator, is a massive force multiplier. And fortunately, they are working very closely with the police in their areas of operation and in the various police precincts around the country.
Tony, we can look at all these worries that the security services have, and what was the other one? It's South Africa is above average in unrest, for example, and the internal stresses and things. But isn't the bottom line here that we just don't have intelligence, we don't have state security, we don't have the police, as you heard, crime intelligence? Is that the bottom line? If that was fixed, then those other things wouldn't be a worry.
Possibly. The unrest of 2.5 years ago was totally unexpected, but should have been predicted by crime intelligence and the police and other organizations. As we've seen less than a month ago, where a nation was caught unawares with their trousers around their ankles. The same could happen to the SAPS.
So what are the security companies doing now that they've identified these risks, economic, social unrest, and the power energy supply? What is being done, and what are you taking from this report?
I don't think that report has been fully studied yet. However, since load shedding has started, the private security industry has been working very closely with the law enforcement agencies. Unfortunately, they do not have the powers of search and seizure. They are not peace officers, which means that although they are the first responders in any crime incident, invariably private security is at the scene of the crime or the incident long before the SAPS. All they can do is, in effect, protect the scene to make sure that nobody escapes, or to ensure that the evidence is not disturbed. But the private security sector does not have the same power as what the SAPS have.
The bottom line,
grossly outnumbered.
Yeah, so the bottom line, Tony, is you're going to have to go to the police and security systems in South Africa and say, look at the problems. We can only do so much. You guys need to get fixed.
The industry has for quite a while been trying to get peace officer status, not at all levels, but the more senior security officer supervisors, management level, which will help a lot. But it's falling on deaf ears, unfortunately, and I don't think it's going to happen. We do, however, work closely with the regulator of the industry, the Private Security Industry Regulatory Authority, who report to the Minister of Police. And in fact, we have another joint meeting on Friday. There does not seem to be any willingness on the side of the SAPS to give the industry those powers.
All right, Tony, unfortunately we need to leave it there. We're out of time, but I think the point is strongly made. Tony Botha, National Administrator of the Security Association of South Africa, on that report. Yeah, there are 2,000 security actors across 30 countries, and South Africa was topping the table on some of those big worries across the world. Coming up, good news in the tourism sector and what is happening at the SABC. That's coming up after news headlines at 28 minutes to 5. 50 runs of
Yeah.
27 overs with 6 wickets remaining.
Yeah, the
They need
target is 340.
9.5 runs an over.
So we'll keep you up to date with that one. Ending things off with tennis. Spanish superstar Carlos Alcaraz will represent Team Europe at the Lever Cup in Berlin in 2024. Team Europe captain Bjorn Borg says that he was super excited to name the two-time Grand Slam winner Alcaraz as the first player in his team, and he made an early start to preparing his six-man team for next year in a bid to win back-to-back Lever Cup after 2 consecutive losses to Team World in 2022 and again earlier this year. That's it. It's a wrap from my side. For SAfm Sport, I'm Dumian Kapele.
Everyone is looking for value. There's value
Investment officer at Makwe Fund Managers. Makwe, is it a quiet day on the markets today?
So far, it is a quiet day waiting for the U.S. Fed chair to start talking today and tomorrow. And good afternoon to you and to the listeners. Basically, investors are cautiously perched on the edge, and that's before the reality-checking moment. And both the Fed's chair speech today and China's inflation data tomorrow hold significant potential to scrutinize and possibly even reverse the recent upsurge when it comes to the optimism that we've been seeing in the markets. And market participants are waiting to see how hard the central bank will push back against the recent loosening of financial conditions. And the dollar's rebound extended. That's after some of the U.S. Fed officials left the door open to further interest rate hikes, and that's ahead of their chairman's speech, meaning the U.S. dollar is in demand. Hence, the likes of the rand have been falling, and market participants want to hear if there's a pushback against the rate cut talk, as now lately markets have been ramped up or ramping up the bets for the rate cuts next year. And oil prices under pressure, though they've managed to regain some of the ground. They were at some point at the 3-month lows, and that was at the back of concerns over falling demand in the US and China, and those are the largest consumers, and traders are less concerned about the potential supply disruptions resulting from the Middle East conflict. Also in the Eurozone, falling retail sales highlighted a weak consumer demand and the prospect of a recession. As we said, oil at some point was down 4%, but now it's only down 0.2% at 81.19. And the safe haven demand for the yellow metal is cooling, and a firmer dollar also not helping, while the auto catalyst palladium extended its retreat to a 5-year low, partly due to the substitution of palladium to a cheaper platinum, because we know that they have been now using that when it comes to combustion engine vehicles. And gold is down only 0.2% at 1,964, platinum down 1.6% at 879. The Dow, just like S&P, down 0.2%, DAX down 0.6%, FTSE down 0.1%, CAC, just like the JC, down apologies, John, they're all up 0.2%, 0.2%, DAX also up 0.6%, FTSE also up 0.1%, CAC up 0.8%, just like the JSE. And the JSE has been led by the industrials, which are up 1.4%. Our financials are up 1%, resources are up 0.2%, and the rand is 18.48 to the US dollar, 22.68 to the pound, and 19.73 to the euro.
Man, it's a little worried there. I thought everything was red. Now it's green. Good news. Makwe.
Good news for now.
Yay! For now. Yeah, you see, spoken like a true economist. It's always it's never like, yeah, we're gonna go buy stuff. No. It's cautiously optimistic. Is always the word. Makwe Masilela, thank you very much, Chief Investment Officer at Makwe Fund Managers.
Let's have the conversation. WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107.
Good afternoon, John. Election Tafolkop. You know, the ANC government is so hypocritical because of they can speak about Palestine and Israel, but they keep quiet about the injustice that happens just right here in our doorstep, just right here in Zimbabwe. Thank you. What a lovely show as always.
Good day, John. You know, John, people are actually surprising me. Every political party here in South Africa is supporting whoever they want to support. You know, DA is supporting Israel for what they are doing to the Palestinians. They don't say anything about anything that is happening in the continent. They are supporting Ukraine. Now, what is wrong when ANC chooses who to support? Because everybody chooses who to support and they don't get blamed. But when ANC chooses who to support, then it's get blamed. No, man.
Let's go to Patrick. Hello, Patrick.
Hi, John. How are you?
Lekker.
Okay. John, I might sound happy, but I'm really saddened.
Tell me why.
More especially by our fellow South Africans who are blaming the government for taking a stance on recalling our diplomat from Israel.
Okay.
I think, to me, John, this is a very good step at once. Because, John, if you can see the visuals, the videos of the kids, the children, these toddlers at Gaza, you wouldn't come to the media and say what my fellow South African coming to the media and say about Israel and Gaza. The visual dawns are really, I don't know, really disastrous.
Mm-hmm.
This is a clear genocide. Israel are killing innocent children in the name of Hamas. Well, we know Hamas are underground. Why can't you go down there and search for them? And just not long ago, one of the callers said South Africa is against God. So does that person want to tell me Israel is killing the 4-month-old baby for God? That's what they're trying to tell me.
So you think pulling the diplomats there, doesn't that send a message that South Africa wants to be a mediator, but you're pulling out the very diplomats that can mediate?
No, we've been mediating for these two countries for long, John.
Mm-hmm.
What magic is going to happen now, more especially if we have America telling them not to listen to other countries?
Right.
What outcome are we expecting? Because we know all countries are scared. They do want to pull out, but they're scared of America.
Did you hear my interview with the Vice President of the SA Jewish Board of Deputies?
No, I didn't hear it, unfortunately, John.
All right. So just, I take what you're saying, and I hear what you're saying. But if you didn't hear that interview, it should be a podcast. I'm sure you can go find it on our Twitter account.
I'll go and look for it.
It was just he obviously has a completely different view to what you have because of the angle they're taking. But do yourself a favor, just listen to what Sev Kringle has to say, and then. Maybe call it. We got time. Call me back and see if you agree or disagree with him as well, because he had some strong views from another perspective, and it'll be interesting to see what you think after that. All right.
Yeah, I'll do that, John. Thanks, man.
Patrick, thank you very much.
Okay.
Give us a call. Let's get rid of Patrick over there. 086 000 2032. We got a couple more voice notes to squeeze in.
Hi, John. This is Salim. You know, I hear many people saying, if you don't support Israel, then you are not supporting God. Is there a God that gives land to a person that's born in Europe and gives them a land in Palestine? Is there a God that allows children to be massacred, women to be murdered, hospital to be bombed, school will be bombed, destruction of a whole village? You call that a God that's just and fair? So what are these people talking about? They have no imagination. There cannot be something that God wants.
We'll take more calls and voice notes later on in the show. As always, the last, 15, 20 minutes are open line as well. 0614 104 107 if you want to do a voice note. We're talking tourism next.
SAfm values your views. Be an active citizen.
Mzansi, we thank you for what you did yesterday, today, and what you will do tomorrow to meet your tax obligations. By submitting your income tax returns on time and keeping your personal and banking information up to date, you have made your tax matters daily matters. Our gratitude as SARS is immeasurable. We thank you for contributing to our country's prosperity. Visit sars.gov.za to keep your details updated. Your tax matters. SARS at your service.
10 of the world's greatest cricket nations are back on the pitch to argue about their next champions.
Five-time global champs Australia are searching for their 6th title.
But two-time winners, India, believe their home fans deserve the 3rd title.
While the defending champions England are more interested in back-to-back victories.
And Frontiers are eager to reach the final.
Is it time for the new champs?
Witness the incredible game from 5 October to 19 November on S3 and SABC+.
Subscription fees do not apply. SABC Sport is the official broadcaster of the ICC Men's ODI Cricket World Cup, India 2023.
Hashtag the journey of the ultimate glory. For the love of the game.
What was that sound? Was it a life support machine in an ICU ward? Was it a car reversing for the driver to take another look at a woman he saw at the bar last night? Or was it the birth of a new robot machine about to change the world? This time, you decide. It's your story. The award-winning SAfm playwriting competition is back. SAfm invites all writers to explore the medium of sound, the theater of the mind, and to create a 1-hour radio play in English. Get writing now and submit your play before the 22nd of January 2024 for a chance to win one of 3 large cash prizes. For more information, visit safm.co.za. You are listening to Jon Gericke on SAfm.
Just before we go to tourism, who's this? Nkamo 472196991 says, please provide the WhatsApp number, or can John say it slowly? So if you've never sent a WhatsApp, this is the number. Get your phone out. You got your phone? I'm going to give you time. Get your phone, unlock it. You ready? You unlock the phone? I'm just having a look. See, you unlocked. Okay, there we go. See, if your phone's anything like mine, it takes 20 minutes to unlock. All right, so unlock. Here's the SAfm WhatsApp number. Write it down. We'll get in your phone. Ready? Start again. 0614. 0614. You got that? 104 107. And you can remember the 104, 107 because that's our frequency range, right? Or is somewhere between 104 and 107 on the FM dial. So I'll say it again, and I'll say it again slowly. 0614 104 107. That's our WhatsApp number. I can give you the phone number as well. I'll do that later on because there's only so many numbers you can handle in your brain. What is it? 5 numbers. It must be 7. I wonder if millennials are like the same. And Gen Zers are the same as us Gen Xers. Because, we used to have to remember 7 numbers. That was how long a phone number is. It was 7 numbers long. Now it's 10 numbers because you've got to throw in the first 3 digits as well. But yeah, so I'll say it again. The WhatsApp number is 0614 104 107. One more time, 0614 104 107. You can send a voice note there and we will play it. And we will gladly play them later on in the program. While you are phoning in, let's talk get an update on what's happening in tourism. The sector is booming again, apparently. Between January and September this year, South Africa saw an influx of tourists. Over 6.1 million visitors arrived in the country. That's 58.4% up compared to the 3.8 million the same period last year. Let's find out a little bit more about this. Also at the World Travel Market that's on the way in London. Our Minister of Tourism, Patricia de Lille, joins us. Minister, thank you very much for joining us.
Good afternoon, and good afternoon to the listeners.
I saw pictures of you at WTM. I've been there. It's massive. What's the South African stall like?
It's massive. I'm telling you, we have attracted people from all over the world. It's amazing how many people do know about South Africa. But our task is to convert them to press that button to come and visit us. And we have also received an award for the most sustainable country in tourism. And, the Telegraph newspaper here is very well disposed towards us. And I met with the editor, and I feed information regularly to them, especially around safety. And it's gone very, very well. We've got 27 exhibitors from South Africa, and the stands have been busy every single day.
Tell us about these exhibitors. How are they chosen?
Well, first of all, SAT will rent the space for the exhibition and pay for it. And then the exhibitors from South Africa then rent a piece from SAT. And in that way, SAT do get some of the money back. It's chosen by, we've got a market access program where we support SMMEs. So there's a section just dealing with, small towns, villages, townships, and community tourist attractions. And basically they apply, to use the space. And we make sure that they cut across all the sectors within tourism, including hospitality, the leisure travel, the safaris, and all the provinces are also represented here, and they also take some of the space.
Who are we aiming our tourism at the moment? American market's still very small. Is it still the Europeans, Germans, Austrians that are coming, and the Chinese market that we're focusing on?
No, we're focusing on at least 8 or 10, what we call source markets. Mm-hmm. And yes, we have been focusing in terms of the BRICS agreement on the BRICS countries, and I have just signed an implementation plan for joint marketing with the Minister of Brazil, and then China and India. Both of them, they raised the issues around visas and air access, and we are working on that. But the bulk of our tourists, out of the 6.1 million, about 4 million comes from the continent of Africa. And so we've also engaged with countries like Nigeria, Malawi, Eswatini, Rwanda. They're all here. And we work together with all the other African states to market Africa as the continent, the brand Africa, African continent. So we target all the markets. But of course, there some markets are bigger than others, and like China and India. But we're doing very well on the American side too, and the European side. Here in the UK, in the past 8 months, our visitors has increased by about 35%, over 250,000 of them. And here we are talking to the airlines because the prices are very, very exorbitant.
That was going to be my question. Are the airlines buying into this? Because it's all very well wanting people to come here, but if we don't have the airplanes to be able to bring them, what's the point?
Yes, they do buy into it, but what they explain to us also, they also still recovering some of their losses of COVID-19. And maybe that's an addition to the cost of air travel. But things are beginning to stabilize. We are just working hard to get more direct flights to South Africa, because that is what tourists prefer, instead of changing over. And there are great opportunities. And so South Africa now also go out, and with our air access strategy, I will be putting a structure together so that we have some coordination coming from South Africa. But our focus really with air access is also within Africa. Inter-Africa travel is very difficult. And with SAA not being there anymore, We need to get more flights back that fly just in the continent. So that's our key priority, air access.
Minister, we got a minute. There are, every now and again, there's news reports about tourists that might be involved in crime. Are you having to put out fires when it comes to trying to sell South Africa to the international market?
No, not at all. I think all countries have a problem with crime. In South Africa, at least 99% of our tourists return home safely. But and so we acknowledge that there is a crime problem, but we have partnered with the private sector, and we've now been explaining to the world what we are doing. The private sector invested in a secure app that travelers can download when they arrive in our country. They've also established a 24-hour operational center in Johannesburg. And from the government side, we've invested 174 million, and we are training currently, as we speak, 2,300 tourism safety monitors, and we are working with the police. So we are not denying that there is crime, but like in any other country, you have got hotspots where tourists just don't go after certain hours. So it's not really a deterrent, but they're happy to hear that we are doing something about it.
We're going to have to leave it there, unfortunately. Minister of Tourism,
Thank you.
Patricia de Lille, joining us live from London. You're with SAfm. It's 5 o'clock. Time for the news.
on SAfm.
Ford is turning 100 and there's never been a better time to buy a brand new Ford. We're giving away 100 vouchers worth an amazing 50,000 Rand each and the sensational grand prize of us paying for one lucky winner's Ford. It's the
Jon Gericke on SAfm.
I can say the voice note quickly now. 0614 104 107.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. John, I just want to say something here regarding Dr. Nandi Pamakutumana's case. I'm failing to understand what kind of legal advice is this gentleman, Mashini Mutlu, giving to this lady. I mean, why would you keep on advising a client to apply for bail and go as far as appealing when the court is telling you that now that's not going to happen? I mean, how many times should we tell this gentleman that this lady is a flight risk because she knows how to skip the country without any documentation? Does he really have to keep on advising this lady so bad?
Hi John, this is KM. I just want to say that all the leaders of this world who violated the rights of the people must be brought to book, all of them. We mustn't discriminate and say that one must be arrested and then that one, no, is our comrade, he must not be arrested. I say all of them because they have violated the rights of the people. People died during their wars that they incited in people. So all of them must be arrested. Thank you very much.
SAfm values your views. Be an active citizen.
9 minutes past 5. John in for Eldrin. It's Beyond the Headline. Good evening to you. Although it's still afternoon now that the sun is up. If you're in Cape Town, it's still like early afternoon. Let's move now to big numbers. The National Treasury has rejected a funding request made by the South African Broadcasting Corporation. Totally 1.5 billion rand. The funding request was made by the public broadcaster to support the coverage of next year's elections. Last week, the national broadcaster was omitted from the medium-term budget policy statement, and the Finance Ministry has raised concerns surrounding the sustainability of the institution, given that it's in worse shape than in pre-COVID-19 pandemic when it received a 3.2 billion rand loan guarantee. Let's unpack the implications this decision would have for the delivery of services at the public broadcaster, and if these are early indications of possible retrenchments in the foreseeable future. Joined by Thandi Smith, Head of Programming at Media Monitoring Africa. Thandi, good afternoon to you. It's a lot of money. Didn't the SABC just go through a cost-cutting exercise?
Hi, good afternoon to you and your listeners. So it is a lot of money, but it's money that is absolutely critical to the functioning and sustainability of the SABC. This is not a new conversation. This is not something that we haven't dealt with before, but there are a number of reasons and a number of contributing factors that have led the institution to be in the position that it is today. And so, yes, the SABC recently did go through a cost-cutting exercise, but that wasn't going to solve all of its financial problems. As I said, there are many contributing factors to why we see it in the position that it's in today, and we need to get to a position where it is well funded, where it is sustainable, and where the public broadcaster is able to fulfill its mandate.
Is this just like a host of state-owned enterprises across the country where it's just been badly managed, boards haven't been implemented in time, and things just aren't running the way they should be?
Well, the governance around the state institutions is in question, and the SABC is part of the entire ecosystem of the challenges. And we've seen, a number of issues or a number of decisions being made when it comes to the governance of the SABC that is putting it into this situation. For example, we've gone through the whole saga with the analog switch off debate, which, the department decided to, or went through a really bad decision-making process around switching off analog signals, which lost the SABC 40% of its analog dependent audience. And that challenge was taken up in the Constitutional Court, and we won that case to say it wasn't a well thought out process and it needed to be revisited. And so that was a deliberate decision, and it resulted in SABC losing a massive amount of audience. We saw the deliberate delays around appointing the board of the SABC. And again, that also went to a legal challenge around the reasons for the delaying in the board. The SABC operated for, more than 6 months without a board at all, in a very critical state, in a very challenging media environment. And so you have to question why these decisions are being made at the time that they're being made. And now, in the lead up to the elections, we're sitting with the public broadcaster who still enjoys the largest audience for media in the country, who reaches the populations and audience members who rely on the SABC for information, finding itself again in a precarious position.
Before we go into what this means for the election coverage, which is the big point of this, there's talk about a household levy instead of TV licenses. There's no paying of TV licenses. What is the current standing on that? What is are TV licenses important for the funding of the SABC?
I think a revised funding model in its entirety is important for the SABC. There is research and there is talks around how the TV license model is outdated, but then we need to look at sustainable ways of funding the public broadcaster. And this does come from its key shareholder, which is government. We can't have government completely ignoring the fact that SABC needs to be sustainable. But again, there are really good there are alternatives being researched. There are experts working in this field around funding, around business models for the SABC. But that needs to be, expedited in managing the finance. We do see, the current board taking on these issues, knowing that it's in a very bad financial position. But, ultimately, it's the Department of Communications and the minister who then needs to assist with revisiting these models. And we're just not seeing that action.
Yeah, I think the word bailout is also a bit disingenuous because the country owns the SABC, so it's not necessarily bailing out the SABC; it's funding the SABC.
Absolutely, it is funding the SABC, and what we're seeing now in terms of the governance of the broadcaster compared to, say, 5-10 years ago is chalk and cheese. We had the first independent board completing its entire term. The previous board before this current board, and so we are seeing massive improvements in governance. So where you have a board or where you have a public broadcaster where there is mismanagement, where there is wasteful expenditure and deliberate actions being taken to put the SABC under financial pressure, like we saw with the administration around 2016, 2017, then you can question, where the issues are lying. But this is about funding the SABC and ensuring its sustainability.
All right. We talked about election coverage. Why is the SABC important for election coverage?
We desperately need credible media that is able to do their job with, independently during an election period. An election cannot be free and fair if you don't have media that are able to cover an election period fairly. And the SABC plays that absolutely critical role of informing the voting public when it comes to election processes, when it comes to covering political parties and politicians. And during an election period, there are regulations that come into play that media have to adhere to. And so SABC do need resources and does need capacity to ensure that they're able to do that effectively. You cannot make an informed decision when it comes to voting if you don't have the information available to you. And like I mentioned before, SABC still has the largest audience in the country, and it's the only media that caters to all official languages. So if you're not receiving that meaningful information during an election period, you can't make an informed decision. And if you can't make an informed decision, the election credibility comes into question. And so it really is critical that the SABC, as the public broadcaster, is able to operate under those conditions.
Tandy Smith is Head of Programming at Media Monitoring Africa. Thank you very much. Let's get some reflections from civil society on this news, how it'll impact the strengthening community broadcasting in the interest of a broader South Africa, with National Coordinator of SOS, Save Our SABC, Support Public Broadcasting Coalition. Here's Uyanda Siatola.
It is very disappointing that the National Treasury has refused to grant the SABC the 1.5 billion rand that they had asked for, particularly given the fact that the SABC spends about 2 billion rand on a public mandate that government should actually be funding. It also just shows that there really is lack of commitment from the government side to support the SABC. And I think there's also a lack of consideration, of the importance of, the role of the public broadcaster, because you need to keep in mind that the SABC, yes, is a state-owned entity, but a state-owned entity of a different kind that provides news and information freely to, the South African public, to those that cannot afford to consume any other form of, media. In order for people to make informed decisions ahead of the 2024 elections, they need credible information. They need, information and news that is of good quality, that would then, really provide them with the different parties that they need to vote for, with the different manifestos that they need to take into consideration. And if the SABC is cash-strapped and it's going to elections with no money, that would then compromise the journalistic standards that are being applied during the coverage of election news. That would also then mean that the SABC might not be able to go to certain areas because it takes a lot of money for journalists to actually travel across different, locations for them to cover news. That also then means that, certain people within the country will not really their stories will not be reflected on the SABC platform. And the SABC, being a public broadcaster, is actually supposed to do that to really reach, different, locations, particularly the disadvantaged communities. And I think eventually then, we will have an SABC that does not have quality or credible news, which is not something that is ideal, because yes, the public broadcaster plays an elementary role in our democracy, and news and information are what really keep our democratic values entrenched. And I think also that would eventually affect the staff morale, because the SABC is losing money. It's owing Sentech about 745 million rand. It's already lost money in this particular quarter, and the government is actually to blame. We, as the SOS Coalition, we've indicated that, the analog switch off, the late appointment of the board, these are the issues that, we've said long back that are going to affect the viability of the SABC, and government needs to really intervene and ensure that it does reconsider and provide the SABC financial assistance to ensure that South Africans really have, got democratic elections and that they've got access to credible information and news ahead of the 2024 elections.
Asuyanda Siotula, National Coordinator of SOS Support Public Broadcasting Coalition.
For credible and comprehensive coverage of South Africa's fast-moving mining industry and the people shaping it, click through to Creamer Media's Mining Weekly. From policy and innovation to market-moving trends, Creamer Media's Mining Weekly keeps your finger on the resources pulse. For even deeper insight, subscribe to our New Look weekly magazine, out every Friday, together with engineering news. Creamer Media's Mining Weekly. Current, credible, comprehensive.
10 of the world's greatest cricket nations are back on the pitch to argue about the next champions.
Five-time global champs Australia are searching for their 6th title.
But two-time winners, India, believe their home fans deserve the 3rd title.
While the defending champions England are more interested in back-to-back victories.
And Frontiers are eager to reach the final.
Is it time for the new champs?
Witness the incredible game from 5 October to 19 November on S3 and SABC+.
Subscription fees do not apply. SABC Sport is the official broadcaster of the ICC Men's ODI Cricket World Cup, India 2023.
Hashtag the journey of the ultimate glory. For the love of the game.
You are listening to Jon Gericke on SAfm.
5:23 is the time. This week we commemorate South Africa Development Community's Malaria Week under the theme Time to Deliver Zero Malaria, Invest, Innovate and Implement. Comes at a time when more than 7,400 cases of malaria in South Africa this year so far. Let's find out what the co-founder and CEO of Goodbye Malaria, Sherwin Charles, is doing as part of that Invest, Innovate and Implement show. And thanks very much. What does Goodbye Malaria do?
John, thank you so much for having us on the show. Goodbye Malaria is a public-private partnership that really was founded more than 10 years ago. To help Southern Africa get to malaria elimination, focusing mainly on Mozambique, Eswatini, and South Africa, and felt that we in Southern Africa were in a strong position to assist the malaria world in achieving the SDG goals that have been set for 2030.
What's the current state of malaria in South Africa and the surrounding countries?
Unfortunately, the current numbers and risks highlight that malaria is on an increasing trend. What we've seen is that from about 2018, the great progress that we've made since the early 2000s had stalled and had plateaued. And what we found is that there were risks that were arising that really posed real challenges going forward. This included insecticide risks. So mosquitoes were getting used to the insecticides that we use, and the insecticides were not being as efficient. The second thing was that we started to see the parasite that creates the disease within our bodies started to build some resistance to current medication, although that's in very limited areas and very small at the moment, but we're starting to see that develop. And then the third thing is that climate change has had a huge impact on malaria. We have areas where global warming is taking place, that we've seen mosquito species start to develop that haven't been there before. We have mountainous areas within Kenya that had never seen malaria before that are starting to experience cases. And also, of course, the flooding that occurs from heavy rainfall, as well as these typhoons and hurricanes that we've seen, is really allow for the explosion in mosquito populations from standing water. And that's a big problem as well.
All right, Sherwin, that's all the bad news. So what is Goodbye Malaria doing differently now that it hasn't been done over the last 30 years?
I don't think we're doing anything differently that hasn't been done over the last 30 years. I think what we do is we bring a business mindset to the implementation of tried and tested programs that make them very impactful and successful. And so there's almost a total diligence and resilience to what we do that makes a difference. And I think we saw that during COVID, where our programs expanded rather than being contained. So much so that, during the last year, we protected more than 4.3 million people and continue to see a decline in the areas that we work in.
How important, we can talk about drugs and we can talk about nets and all those kind of things. How important is education in the prevention of malaria?
I think education is absolutely critical. And so not just advocacy, but actual education. And part of the challenge we faced with in South Africa, our malaria is really predominantly along our border regions on the eastern side of the country. So you've got Limpopo, Mpumalanga, and northern KZN. And sometimes people are not aware of the malaria risk that exists. And unfortunately, when people fall ill, they're not immediately tested for malaria. And I think that's very important. So we are working with Discovery and Vitality to ensure that we can inform private sector doctors, so the private doctors, that malaria is a big issue and really ensure that there is access to diagnostics and treatment. So we don't want someone going to a clinic and then not being able to find drugs available. I must say the Department of Health has been really proactive in ensuring that these clinics are stocked, given that our malaria is seasonal. So we're coming into malaria season now,
right.
And so I really want to encourage your listeners to take preventative measures if they know they're going into an area of malaria risk.
You've mentioned the private buy-in. Has that been a challenge, or has government been a challenge to buy into your ideas and your programs?
No, I must say government has been a good partner to us. We're working with three governments, and the three governments have signed an MOU, an agreement of cooperation between the three of them. And what we have seen is that the governments have aligned their policies and their processes to match what is being done on either side of the border. Malaria knows no borders, and so it's been great to see governments work together in this regard.
Where can we find out more about what you do, Sherwin?
Please visit our website, www.goodbyemalaria.com. If you're a Discovery member, please look out for the information that will come through shortly on how to support us.
That is Sherwin Charles, co-founder and CEO of Goodbye Malaria. That website again, www.goodbyemalaria.com. It's exactly 5:30. Let's get news headlines with Greg Host. Update coming up in 23 minutes. Let's look ahead with Jimmy Moyaha. Good afternoon, Jimmy. What's been happening?
Good afternoon, John. Good afternoon to me. Good afternoon to the listeners. The markets have been quite up and down. Earlier this morning, markets were in the red. They seem to be in the green. Jerome Powell speaking in the U.S. seems to be giving the dollar some strength. But we'll look into that in a moment. What's coming up on the show, though, is a couple of interesting stories. Ford has announced that they are investing 5.2 billion rand in a new hybrid Ford Ranger. I don't know how that'll go over with consumers in South Africa, but we chat to the Ford CEO around that, Ford South Africa CEO around that. We celebrate 6 years of the A2X exchange. We speak to the A2X CEO as well there. That's an alternative exchange to the JSE for those that aren't aware of what the exchange does. We also take a look at the investment landscape. We speak to fund manager at Orbis, which is a branch of Alan Gray, around the investment insights that we've seen globally unfold. And then I think this might be one of the more interesting stories for those that have vehicles, and you know how you're able to trade in your vehicle for a newer model under some lease agreement that most of the companies now offer these days? Well, you can now do that with Baldwin Apartments. So we speak to Baldwin Properties around what that looks like, because I can't imagine we'd want to all be trading in our apartments every so often and moving every so often. So that would be an interesting story to dig into. And then because it's Wednesday, we've got our Executive Lounge feature today, and today we're chatting to the general manager of Sub-Saharan Africa at Uber around his journey into getting into Uber, considering the background that he comes from. This is interestingly off the back of Uber celebrating 10 years in South Africa. So we'll chat to the general manager later this evening and just get a sense of what he gets up to on a daily basis. But as I promised earlier, the markets, we've had Henku Creer keeping an eye on the markets throughout the day. Henku, good afternoon. Thanks so much for keeping an eye on the markets. Good day for the local equities, much better than we saw yesterday, but not such a good day for the rand.
Absolutely, Jimmy. Hi to you and to John, and good evening to all the listeners. Yes, Jimmy, and if we start off by looking at what's going on in the US, you and I spoke off air about Jerome Powell that's busy speaking at the moment as we talk, and at the moment US markets unchanged, not moving at all. Still early in the day for them, but as we know, the moment Jerome Powell gets off that stage and from behind that podium and finish talking, we'll immediately see the markets react to that. So we'll see what US markets do after he's finished speaking. But then European stocks, they closed closed in the green today, with the European market about 7.8% stronger at the end of the day. Then locally, the JSE finished 1.3% stronger, and you would expect that after the horrible day that we had yesterday. Today we finished at a level of 72,466 points. The financial index also 1.3% up. Then the resources index gained 1%, and the industrial index finished 1.6% stronger. Naspers had a good day. Naspers gained 3% today. Richmond 2.5% up. AB InBev and Prosus, each of those 2% stronger. And FirstRand, Standard Bank, as well as BHP and British American Tobacco each gained 1%. On the negative side of things, Implats lost 3% today. Then Amplats also 2.5% weaker. Spar and Truworths each 2.5% down. And Tungela and South32 finished the day 2% weaker. Back to the positive side of things, Investec finished 5% stronger. AVI and Dischem each gained 4.5%, and in Anglo Gold, Adcock as well as DRD Gold finished 4% stronger. And then we also see Harmony and Supergroup each gaining 3.5%. On the commodities market, the price of gold is currently $1,965 an ounce. Silver trading at $22.70, platinum now $878, and palladium trading at $1,010. Brent crude, very easy to remember, $80.80 a barrel. And then if we move over to the exchange rate, you'll pay 18 Rand 50 to the US dollar, 22 Rand 70 to the pound, 19 Rand 77 to the euro, and 11 Rand 88 to the Australian dollar. And a Bitcoin, very similar to yesterday and the day before, $34,700 for a whole Bitcoin, and that's more or less 656 1,000 Rand. So Jimmy, that in short is how the markets performed today.
Thank you for that update, Inko. I'm just looking at the charts myself, and I'm seeing that platinum is down almost 6% for the day. That's not good for PGM counters, and I suspect we will likely feel that in the resources counters tomorrow or so, or throughout the rest of the week, unless that situation changes. But I'm looking forward to chatting about all of these a little later on with David Shapiro. He joins me for markets just after 6. For now, John, we're going to cross back to you and the team, and we're going to catch up with the listeners just after 6.
Ask the Uber guy if you can. I know you've got your questions, but my mom and dad, who are mid-70s to late 70s, they installed Uber for the first time last night because they want to use it, and they are so scared. Like they've only heard the bad news stories about bad things about Uber, and I've told them it's great. Use the Uber, push the button, and the guy rocks up, and they go, "But how do we know where the guy is? It's not going to work. How do I know where I'm going to go? How does he know?" Ask him if they're 75-year-old friendly.
I will definitely do that.
Don't know if you will, but it's okay. I would ask him. Thank you very much, Jimmy Moyaha. Got all the MoneyWeb market update news for you in about 17 minutes.
Good afternoon, John. I used to pay for TV license up until 2018. You know why I stopped paying TV license? It's because all these Chinese shops that sells TV, you don't need to produce your TV license in order to buy TV. It's only these big shops, games and micro, what, that you have to produce a TV license to buy a TV. But in all this Chinese shop, you go there, you buy your TV, you're going home, you plug it, you watch your TV. So I don't see a point of paying for a TV license.
Well, you're listening to me on the radio. You heard your voice notes on the radio. That costs money. Somewhere, that money has to come from somewhere, and one of those ideas is your TV license. TV license isn't to buy the TV. The TV license is to watch and listen to the SABC, isn't it? Otherwise, how else do I get paid?
Is chalk and cheese.
Hi, John and the listeners. So, I have 2 TV sets, but I'm not paying for the TV license. I haven't paid for it for years.
Why?
I stopped paying for it when I saw my money being misused. Then I realized that the SABC didn't need my money. I remember even during Claudi's time, there was money which was being thrown around, getting increases, some money being thrown to artists, being given money. No, money was just given willy-nilly. So I refused for my money to be part of that. In fact, even right now, the people who are in charge, I don't really have so much faith on them. So I really don't see why I should be paying for a TV license.
Well, you are, aren't you? If the government has to bail out or give the SABC money, that's your money. That could be used for other things, isn't it? Let me know what you think. 0614 104 107. Let's go to some phone calls, though. Nicholas is in East London. Hello, Nicholas.
Hi, John. How are you?
Lekker, go ahead.
Good. Now, I want to make a comment. I think it was today, 1 o'clock news, when I was listening to the news reader when we were saying 2 students, grade 12 students, were killed. I'm not sure it was last night. Similar things that have happened to them. One was shot at while he was studying in Mpumalanga, and the one in the Eastern Cape shot while he was coming back from a study group. And this, and this child died when he was trying to run away, fell on somebody's yard and died there. I'm listening to our leaders who are so concerned about what is happening in the Middle East. And whose children are those children? I mean, are those two, the two? That now our leaders are totally disregarding of what is happening, the crime and the killing of people in our own country. And now they say Israel or Netanyahu must be arrested and be charged for committing, a crime against humanity. What is happening in our country? We have so many these people called the hitmen, where we know exactly, John, that hitmen, there's always somebody behind. We're wasting a lot of money, yet we know that these people are politicians, most of them, and are business people that are hiring these people. And now it's even worse now. It's killing of innocent grade 12 children. John.
All right. Nicholas,
we're about what is happening in other countries.
We're out of time, Nicholas, but you've made your points. Politicians worrying about other countries instead of focusing on what's happening here. Is that what you feel as well? Let us know. We'll take Sandile. You're in KwaZulu-Natal. We'll take you in a minute. We've got to take an ad break.
Hello, Michelise. Hope you well. Listen, I went to this car heaven place We Buy Cars with Henriette to sell the caravans and the jet skis she must now got from the divorce because she's never going onto the Vaal River again, she says. So We Buy Cars bought it from her for a great price. Nobody, you should tell your husband to sell all of those project cars and take you to the Maldives. Or just give them a call because they come to your house and then they buy your car somewhere so on the spot where they're so gerieflik.
We Buy Cars, the best place to sell your car by far.
The Kosi Nation says, Kosi alphela umoya, but the Bucks are confident that yonke indawo
In KwaZulu-Natal at 8 minutes to 6. Hello, Sandile.
Good afternoon, John. How are you?
Lekker, go ahead.
John, I'm blind, and we are living with my sister in Bali. So last year during the floods, our house got destroyed on one side. So we did report this to the councillor in our area. And he told us to go, he referred us back to ward committee member. So we spoke to the ward committee member because we saw some of the neighbors who had the same problem. They were given temporal housing structures So we followed up, we wrote a letter to this guy, and nothing has happened. So I was just appealing to the MSC of Human Settlements in KwaZulu-Natal and his office if they could assist us, because I'm blind, dependent on a disability grant. My sister is not working.
So there might be an update soon, because was it yesterday or Monday that a state of disaster for KwaZulu-Natal was implemented. So there might be more emergency funding being able to go to that province, which means they'll be able to help you out. So maybe get on it again now that there has been this state of disaster implemented.
Oh, okay.
All right. That came through yesterday or the day before. We were going to do a story on it, but time got constrained. But there should be more money coming to help people just like you. So maybe if you can, get onto that initial contact and say, how's it? What's going on?
All right.
All right. Good luck to you, Sandile in KwaZulu-Natal. Thank you for calling as well. Let's take some more voice notes on 0614 104 107.
Hi, John. I pay my TV license. I'm quite religious about it. I have a TV set in the house. I can't remember when I last watched SABC. But I pay the TV license on principle. You know, it's there, it's supposed to be done, and I do it. I listen to the radio, and I think one of the reasons I am able to listen to the radio is because I pay the TV license. Even though my voice notes don't get to be heard all the time, but I benefit from listening to the radio.
Hi, I would like to ask your guest, if the spokesperson of the president calls a press conference and then says ENCA will carry the coverage, that is a private broadcaster, does it matter?
No.
And in terms of media, why would an important office like that call on a private business to do such a thing? I would really like you to break it down for me. Thanks, it's Bongi in Joburg.
I'm not 100% sure why ENCA was picked. It doesn't really matter. So what happens at these press conferences, and not all of them, there are a number of them where it does happen. There's mainly for the sport as well. There's a pool photographer that'll go. So there'll be one or two cameras that'll be set up by the pool videographer, and they will then send that feed to any broadcaster that wants it, and it was free. They weren't being, from what I understood with that one that I think you're talking about, where the president did his speech. So that was one camera into an audio queue. It wasn't very well done, to be honest, but there was one camera into an audio queue. He read it. So that was supplied by ENCA, and from what I understood, it was free. They weren't paid for it, and ENCA would then supply that to all the broadcasters. So if you're an affiliated broadcaster or you want that feed, you phone that up and go, how's it? How do I get the feed? And that would be sent. Maybe ENCA were just more available. Maybe they had satellite technology. I don't know the full answer, but it's not uncommon for the SABC to be that pool videographer, or uncommon for an independent videographer. If you watch the court cases, for example, there'll be two. That might be an independent videographer that is standing there in the corner. You always see them in the corner. They'll be feeding it to a central place, and then the broadcasters can take it. And that's supplied for free, from what I understand. Maybe not always, though. There'll be an exception to every rule. Think about the Zondo Commission. That wasn't always the SABC that was in there. It was almost like the Zondo Commission's videographers. So, yeah, why did they choose the NCA particularly? I don't know the answer to that. And, yeah, maybe we can find out. I'll do some research. It'd be interesting to find out. We're going to have to wrap up the show, unfortunately. I got messages. Sorry, I don't have messages. I do have messages. That's for later. The boss has just come in and said I got a message. Nothing like to get the heart beating as you end the show when the boss comes in. We leave you with the words of Plato, who once said, never discourage anyone who continually makes progress, no matter how slow. Sounds like he was talking about me. The Heavy D crew playing us out. Credited by Joe. Thanks very much. We'll see you tomorrow.
Hi, this is Joe from Durban, and wrapping up tonight's BTH, thanking Jon Gericke, standing in for Alvin Sampier. Threw me on the spot desk, the production team, Team A, Temba, Kanya, Vusani, Sia, and Lungi. Thank you for all the hard work, guys. Have a good evening.
You are listening to Jon Gericke on SAfm.